Right now. Right now.
It's early December and we've just arrived in Lisbon. Checking into our hotel, which is self-catering accommodation. Why Lisbon? Because in December the temperatures are not summery, but at least nothing like the winter further north, varying between 8 degrees and 16 degrees centigrade. So it's a way to escape from the chills and the rain. Although, in the end, we did not escape from the rain. Our first stop is the Praça de Comércio, which is the gigantic open square facing the river, mainly 19th century buildings, quite majestic, and a rendezvous point for a lot of Lisbon people. It's a great view of the river and a great introduction to the city, leading on afterwards to the shopping streets in the different neighbourhoods, which we're going to be visiting over the next couple of days. Then a quick stroll through Chiado, one of the more cultured neighbourhoods, full of shopping and extremely busy with tourists. We were quite surprised by how busy the city was. Not necessarily only foreign tourists, although there were a lot of Spaniards because I think it was a public holiday in Spain. From Chiado, you get an amazing view over the 7 hills of Lisbon. Lisbon is a very hilly city with absolutely terrific architecture. I say 7 hills, I think that's probably more like Rome, but it feels like 7 when you've been up and down them all day. We spent the whole afternoon on a guided tour, walking tour of the city. It's a great city to walk, but as I say, quite hilly, so you need your walking shoes and you need some stamina. The institutional building still holding the placards for the 50th anniversary of the Carnation Revolution. The Carnation Revolution in 1974, a really great example for the world of non-violent regime change, kicking out the old fascist regime of Salazar and bringing in real democracy, which Portugal still enjoys to this day. After Chiado, down to the Baixo, which is the main pedestrianised shopping district, equally busy, incredibly frenetic with people and all sorts of stores, souvenir stores, yes, but even local stores, local food stores and fashion stores, and generally extremely busy shopping. The highlight being the local pastel de nata, and we'll come back to that later. There are even people in local costume from other countries in the shopping district. This was a Mexican restaurant. Relationships between Portugal and Latin America, mainly Brazil, of course, but also the other countries, are really good and positive and constructive and full of spirit of mutual collaboration with mutual esteem, from what we are told by our hosts. Portugal, of course, is also the home of port, the fortified wine whose name comes from the port further north called Porto. Because of the friendly rivalry between Lisbon and Porto, we won't dwell much on the actual port. But it's a major export for the country, along with cork and a few other products. Lots of people eating outside, despite the not particularly warm weather. Although, as I say, it wasn't too chilly. The restaurant fare is mainly seafood. Lots of use of olive oil. We were told that, I think, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, that the Portuguese consume more olive oil than water, and we're not surprised because we tried to pick the least oily dish on the menu by asking for grilled fish, and it turned out to be swimming in olive oil, but it was delicious. And of course, bacalhau, which is salted cod, is the staple of Portuguese cuisine. I think since they learned to salt the fish for its preservation on long sea voyages, because of course one of Lisbon's biggest contributions to history are the voyages of discovery, which started as early as the 15th century. And the adventurers that came from Portugal and became the first circumnavigators of the world and went into all the new unexplored lands from Europe really opened up a comprehensive map of the world. Like in all modern cities, there's a lot of street performance in the shopping districts, music, but not just music. We went past some drummers and some theatre and some students who were apparently going through an annual tradition of singing in the streets of Lisbon before they start their school year. Back to the Praça de Comércio, as I say, a meeting point for Lisbon dwellers. This main city square was rebuilt by the government after the 1755 earthquake and tsunami, which destroyed much of the city. And it was formed with government buildings, and it is absolutely huge. A square of about 175 metres by 175 metres facing the harbour and the Tagus. From there we went on to Alfama, the very famous old town. It's the oldest neighbourhood in Portugal with very narrow winding streets. You can see these houses were built before any kind of organised vehicles, not even motor vehicles. You can only walk up and down. And it's still a very authentic neighbourhood, not cleaned up and not made too pretty by tourism, but actually genuinely a residential place where people live out their lives, shopping, living, working. And it's very pretty. There are two such neighbourhoods. One is Alfama, that's the very famous one. And there's a second one which is known as the Moorish Quarter, because it was literally Moorish. Less well known, but equally authentic and equally eye-striking. The views of the hills of Lisbon and of the river are spectacular both at night as well as during the day. And here we're at the top of Alfama, the neighbourhood I was just describing, and it's well worth a stroll at any time. Local restaurants, as I say, you can see from the shine how much oil is in that plate. We had squid and fish and very fresh salads. Clearly there's not much processed food in this country, which is a huge delight. We always tend to go for self-catering accommodation when we can, not just because it enables us to organise our own meals, but mainly because breakfast is such an important meal of the day, particularly if you want to be healthy. And hotel breakfasts can be absolutely delicious, but they're not usually the most healthy option. So we do like self-catering accommodation. Our hotel this time was at the bottom of the Alfama quarter with the view over the Tagus. A little bit of an excursion to the LX factory. Now, a little known fact is that LX is an abbreviation for Lisbon. And this is, the LX factory is a rehabilitated warehouse and workshop complex that has been turned into boutiques with craftsmen and artists and different kinds of stylish products. Not particularly cheap, we had to say, but definitely original and well worth the visit.
Try to.
One of the highlights of LX Factory is the Landau chocolate coffee shop. I'm not a fan of chocolate cake, but in this case, I fell for it and it was absolutely delicious. I don't know where the name comes from. It seems like a French name, but it's definitely a Portuguese production. And I would say this chocolate cake is almost just worth the trip. Because it really was outstanding. Good. It's very good cake, though.
Cheers.
Cheers. One interesting feature in the Alfama district is the story of photos. It's a public art installation called Alma de Alfama, which means the soul of Alfama. And this was created by an artist called Camilla Watson, who has been taking pictures of the residents. As I say, it's a genuinely authentic neighborhood. And taking pictures of the residents, many of them are elderly, who live and work and do lead out their lives there, and posting those pictures on the walls of the buildings around the streets with a little plaque to explain who they are. Yeah. And it's a really extraordinarily effective way of making the place human and bringing life to bringing the existence of the people to life. Quite serendipitously. It's a great story, and she did this not only in Alfama, but also it's been done in the neighbouring Moorish district. The Tagus doesn't look like a river because it's so wide, but that's actually because just before it reaches the sea, the river broadens out into what is effectively quite a sizable, I suppose you could call it a sea lake. Tagus is tidal, and the amplitude of the tides can be as high as 4 meters at the equinox. And the ships, as you can see through this photo, do manage to get in, and it's a huge estuary or lake just before the link with the sea, the ocean. On the square at the top left of this picture, on Tuesdays is a flea market. Unfortunately, we didn't manage to make it this year because of the weather mainly, which turned dramatically wet. The one day we had planned to go on the Tuesday, but apparently it's well worth a visit. As you can see, cruise ships come into Lisbon, floating apartment blocks. It makes a contrast to the historicity of the city. After Alfama, we went into the castle neighborhood. So, somewhat disappointingly for some, the castle in Lisbon looks like a medieval fortress, but is actually only about 80 years old. And this was one of the products of the regime at the time, which wanted to pretend to look like a stronghold, although there was nothing really military about the castle. The interesting thing about the neighborhood, again, it's very pretty. Old town with narrow streets and cobbled paving. Interestingly, peacocks roaming free in that neighborhood. And at the top of the hill with a great view over the whole city and the river is the castle. But there's nothing historical about it, so we don't necessarily recommend it for a visit. Coming back down from the castle, we went into the other ancient neighborhood of Lisbon, which is known as Muraria, which means I think it's pronounced, I apologize for the pronunciation, I think it means the Moorish district. The Muslims ruled over Portugal, as they did in Spain, from about 711 until they were ejected from Lisbon in 1147. And many of the place names in Lisbon and in Portugal are derived from the Arabic. The Alfama, for instance, comes from the Arabic word Alhama. And in the Muslim quarter, Muraria, we have a similar Caroline Watkins artistic project with the photos of the residents, and it's even more authentic because it's even less touristy than Alfama. So well worth extending your walk into that part of town, with these photos bringing to life the local residential community. Unfortunately, because of the weather, we haven't been able to cover all of the attractions and the stories about Lisbon, and there are many. One of the stories you'll find when you go to the souvenir shops are pictures of a rooster, and this is due to a legend. The rooster of Barcelos, again, please forgive the pronunciation, and this was a miraculously crowing roasted rooster which provided an alibi for a falsely accused pilgrim. And it now symbolizes faith, justice, and good luck, which is why you'll find it pinned up everywhere. There are another number of neighborhoods which we have not been able to show because of the weather, notably the Bairro Alto, which is literally the upper quarter of the town, which is a great for fado, the local music, and for nightlife and for restaurants. Back down through the Muraria quarter, we came back to Pastel de Nata. So this is the local, or even the national, one of the national symbols of Portugal. And unfortunately, custard pie is not a translation which does its justice. It is a very flaky and tasty dish that is originally made in a neighborhood of Lisbon called Belém, where there's also a monastery and a maritime museum. These are the students singing for their supper. Apparently a tradition in Lisbon since some time ago. As you can see, they're dressed in period costume. The most striking thing about Lisbon, which I think is underplayed, is the fact that Portugal was the source of navigators and intrepid explorers known as the discoverers, who really helped to map the world. Thanks for joining us on this wonderful journey.